Hey there, and welcome to the Big Apples Go podcast. My name is Sam.
And I'm Barbara.
And today we're asking what's the crack about what we remember. So we're going to delve into historical events, but with a difference, because we're going to talk about what's been important to us. Some of them personal historical events, perhaps, to us. Personal as far as to our nation, or nations, to the world. Things maybe in our history, in our family history. Important events that we've witnessed and how we felt and where we were and what happened, how we reacted to those kind of events, how the world has changed since our childhood as well. We'll speak a little bit about that. And has it been for the better or worse? And what kind of, not just historical world events that have been significant, that maybe we have seen or witnessed in some kind of way. Sport and entertainment, is the history connected with that important? So lots and lots of stuff about history, but a more personal point of view of history, national and in the world. So let's see what we can bring out of this. It's got a big topic, I think. It's a big. So what for you? I know you. I believe you have a love for history. Am I right? I have a love for history. Right. So it's a great topic for you. And as for me, I'm not. I enjoy history. I don't necessarily every day or every week, but I do enjoy some history. So and it's so. Well, the first question for you: what importance does history have to a person? Why is it important for me, for you, to know about history?
Well, our personal identity is our own history. Mm-hmm. And our country's history is what unites us. So when I'm talking about American history, we sort of have at least two slices. We have before our revolution, when we were the North America and South America and the ships coming over from Europe and the enslaved coming over from Africa. And then the early republic after we fought our war and we are now the United States. Those 13 colonies became the states. And that's our history, how we're united.
And it shaped, I guess.
It shaped us.
And do you think it still has an effect on you as a person today?
Yes, absolutely. Because when you are instilled with patriotism, when you are instilled with our early history of how we fought for democracy, that's who we are. Yeah. And so we are always trying to figure out, who are we as Americans?
Yeah. And I guess it has a huge effect on me, the history of, I'm not, I'm from a small region, Northern Ireland, which is quite young. It was birthed sort of 1920, 21, as far as politically goes. And it's got a lot of tricky history, I would say, controversial, difficult, recent problems and all kinds of stuff. So that definitely affects us it affects our everyday life sometimes as well, because there's some negativity from that too.
Well, when you say that, what we need to remember is who's writing the history, because way back when it was the kings and the people in power. Yeah. And then since the wars, the soldiers are part of the history because we're considering their letters, their love letters to their loved ones. So we're all writing the history now.
Right. So maybe there's more of a freedom with history, less, what would the word be? Less...
mystery maybe?
Less mystery?
We're part of it?
Less censoring maybe?
Yes, less censorship.
Because Vladimir and I spoke about history, and we argue that history can maybe not be entirely trusted either. We assume that it's in a book, it's from 300 years ago, it's correct, it's fact.
Whose agenda?
Yeah. It's we can introduce the idea about the victor writes the history, right? So how can it be? How can we trust it? But okay, how important is history to the world as a whole?
Well, I think the example that comes out to me is really the post-World War II. I keep on going back to that. This World War II, that's when the U.S. came to the aid of Europe as Europe was devastated. And so we have to know why we have that strong alliance with Europe, because that keeps our balance of power. That keeps us who we are. We can't lose that.
Yeah. And it's because there's a big sea, big ocean separating, but there's a lot of strong connections there, and America and the UK have still got those strong connections. I think they have a very good relationship with Ireland too. Which both dear to me, both of those nations, in one way or the other. Okay, great. How important is we've kind of answered how important is history so as for me, how important is history to me? I will read books about history. I mean, part of the reason why I've ended up in Russia is because I've read about the history and it's captured my imagination and interest in the country. So it's been important to me in that respect. To know about what happened to my nation in the past is important to me because I think it shapes our future too. I think it has certainly an influence on our mentality and on our views and maybe on what we will do in the future as a nation. So, are you interested in your family history?
My family history really revolves around church history. As you know, churches really keep very good records. The Catholic Church has that. Right. If you want to know something that happened, you go to their records. Mm-hmm. And I'm sixth generation French Catholic, and I know that I've got the German Catholics over there too. Right. And so I tend to think of my family history as part of the church. Mm-hmm. Even though, I'm not really practicing that much, and I'm a liberal Catholic anyway. But that's how I view my family history, is through the church.
And do you have access to that in America, that history? Can you look up the records?
Well, let's say, I recently got confirmed, actually, in 2017, and I had to dig up my baptism. And yes, it was so easy to get. Right. Oh, it was so easy to get.
That's a good thing, yeah. So if I were to ask the question to myself, I would like to know more about my family history. And actually, an aunt of mine has researched it, and even my mum a little bit too. But I haven't looked at their research, if you like. And I don't know. I mean, I'm especially interested in more what my grandparents did. My dad's dad, what his life was like. And especially my mum's dad, because he died before I was born. I never met him, and he was in World War II he was a Batman. Do you know what a Batman is?
Batman.
And it's not the the superhero or hero. He was a Batman. It's like an officer's kind of aide to an officer. To a private officer. So he was, I guess, kind of like a servant to a private officer, and he looked after an officer's young daughter and did really all the kinds of things to help him out. It seems he was well traveled. He'd been, I believe, Cyprus and other places, if I'm right. My memory fails me, maybe, but he'd traveled quite a bit and then ended up a prisoner of war. And he died quite young, I think, as a result of the negative effects of being a prisoner of war and health effects from that and stuff. So, but it's very interesting, and I'm proud of him. I never met him, but I'm proud of him and what he achieved, even though it was a hard life and difficult. But so that especially is interesting to me, and it's interesting. I mean, that's my mum's dad, and it's someone very special to her. And so by proxy, it's someone very special to me and to my granny, of course, too. So who are both very important to me, both very important ladies. My granny is still alive, 94 years old, still going. She lives in her own little flat, although she gets some help, but she's there and she's still going strong. So it's really, from that point of view, at least, as how it affects the members who are still alive. And it's something I'd like to share with any family I'll have in the future. If I have kids or grandkids, I'd like to share, your granddad, my granddad, your great granddad or whatever. So from that point of view, it's important. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. We've kind of introduced the topic. What have been some of the most important events for your nation, and for me, region or state, for you in your lifetime? So in other words, what really significant, important things can you remember happening?
Yeah, that is so easy for me. Mm-hmm. It's the President Kennedy when he was assassinated. Right. That really affected us as a nation.
Wow.
And I'll tell you just a little briefly of how it affected me, it was an afternoon, the PA system announced that our president was killed, was assassinated. Wow. And so it was already in the afternoon, but they let us out a little bit early. I was 7. I was walking home by myself, which was normal. Yeah. And I got home and my sister-in-law was crying. She was sobbing.
Yeah. Right.
And I knew why.
She was a bit older than you, was she?
She was probably 19.
Okay. Yeah.
And she was sobbing, and I knew exactly why. And nothing was said. So that's a really good example of how we felt on an individual basis. And then we got to witness on black and white TV, little John saluting his daddy at the funeral.
Yeah. How old was he?
Little John?
Yeah.
He was like 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, you can watch it, YouTube it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, of course I've seen, but I don't know anything about Little John.
The whole day, this funeral procession was on TV. And the reason why we love President Kennedy so much was for probably different reasons. But one was his inaugural address was, his big famous quote was, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." Wow. So that instilled patriotism and volunteerism. And he established the Peace Corps, where we'd go, United States citizens would go across to a developing country or an undeveloped country and help, teach English or dig a well for water. And I actually had a little dress with a belt and a medallion that had that same quote on it. We learned how to salute our flag, and we just loved, kept America beautiful. That was the slogan. Yeah. Don't be a litter bug, keep America beautiful. Yeah. And so those are good memories for me.
Yeah. So he had a really positive influence before he died. So, wow. So I guess I'll do one, and then we can go back and forward. I remember another very significant death was Princess Diana's death. And I was actually coming home from a youth meeting, a church youth meeting. It was, I think it was a Friday night, I'm pretty sure. And my dad had collected my older brother and I, and he was bringing us home. I think it was 97, 98 when she died, if I'm right. I don't quite remember. 97, I think, yeah. And he was bringing us home, and he said to us, Princess Diana has died. And I was quite young at the time. I wasn't super young, but I was, I guess, early teens or something like that. But the significance of it and the tragedy of it, I mean, I understood straight away that this is a bad thing. And I didn't know, my dad didn't say too much. He's a man of few words. But I later found out that it had been sort of a real tragedy with the car crashing. And there's some debate over whether or not it was intentional, because she wasn't popular with some. But regardless, I don't think there's anything that is conspiracy theories, but it certainly was a real tragedy that she died, and in such a way as well, so young. And those two little boys, her sons, are kind of comparable to my brother and I, because we're kind of similar age. So I guess for my mum, it was even more of a tragedy, because this is like a model family, or a similar family to her, with 2 young boys about the same age as her 2 little boys at the time. So it was tough, I'm sure, for them, and it was a big thing. And I guess I just felt, wow, this is significant. I didn't have any deep emotion or anything. I hadn't been following the royal family as a young teenager or anything, but I thought, wow, this is significant. And then after that, of course, at the funeral, there was "Candle in the Wind," and what a song Elton John sang at the funeral. And if I listen to that to this day, better understanding what happened and the tragedy of it all, it's a very emotional song, and a lovely song as well. And I think it captured the spirit of the nation too, because it was a real tragedy for everyone to lose her. So, and I think to this day, it's like late Princess Diana, it's a tragedy to this day. So, okay. Go ahead. What else do you
Oh, that's the major. That's what shaped me, because that's patriotism.
Yeah.
And then came the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Well, that was already going on, and that's a lot of protest. And that's when you really protesting is a form of love of your country.
Right.
And when you're already instilled with patriotism, then that protest is even more poignant. It really is more meaningful. Yeah. And so those two things, patriotism and protest, that's the foundation of our democracy too. We have the right to protest, peacefully protest. Okay. And so now currently with this big debate that divides our country, this thing, you have to stand, you have to do a certain thing for the flag. Yeah. Well, when others are kneeling, such as athletes, well, they're doing that for a reason. They're doing this they've been doing this for a long time, peacefully protesting. And what's wrong with that? It has nothing to do with disliking your country.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I guess if you like a nation, if you're proud of a nation, your nation, you want it to change. If there's a problem, you want that problem
that voice
to be fixed
that political
and changed.
Voice.
Yeah.
You want that social voice to rise above and say, this needs to change.
Yeah, okay. Well, the other one, there are a few things I could say about my little region or whatever, and maybe a couple about America that I think has significance and even importance to me. But I guess I'll talk about my little nation. First of all, I remember my little town, 22,000. I hope this isn't too negative, but I remember it blown up. Now, no one was hurt in those bombings, but that's the kind of problems that we've had, called the Troubles, sort of 30-year period in Northern Ireland, which was called the Troubles, where there were very, very strong differences, very, very strong divides between two sides of the community. And even to this day, there are those divides are felt. But as a result of some of that, some of those problems, my town centre was blown up twice in my lifetime. I remember once I was actually in the bathroom. You can imagine, doing the normal bathroom stuff or whatever. And I was quite young. I don't know how young, maybe 10, 11, 12. Wasn't more than 12 anyway, because it was in our old home. And I remember standing in the bathroom, and suddenly there was this huge noise, and I had no idea what it was. And then the rattle of the windows. And it had been a bomb. I mean, we lived, I guess, a mile or two from the town centre, so we were well out of the way of it, but the shockwave and the noise of it all. So I think there was this huge rattle of the windows and then the noise after, and it was just shocking to me. And at first I was like, what is that? And then of course I realized that, wow, there's been something happened in the town, but thankfully no one was injured in that. And then a second time when I was 14, 15, I think, I was still in high school. So just before I finished school, and there was a bomb went off again. And it sort of, I think they were targeting the police station. A lot of banks were in the center at the time and still are today. And so they were blown up. So it didn't, thankfully it was evacuated and no one was killed or injured. But you can imagine that leaves a bit of an impression on you. But I had a kind of sense of adventure, and foolishly, I left school against the wishes of my teachers. I left school and tried to get a look at what was happening. I mean, there was no one killed or injured, but I just wanted, I guess, real sense of adventure and like what's happening and what's going on, because there was an excitement to it. Although, I mean, without maybe a morbid curiosity as well. So I wanted to know just what, but of course I couldn't get to this city, to the town center. I had to walk around it. So I didn't really see anything that satisfied my curiosity in that respect, but that was significant. And then later, 1998, there was a peace agreement signed called the Good Friday Agreement, which put a stop to a lot of those problems, thankfully. And I remember that. I remember there being a kind of debate among two separate kind of groups of politicians, two separate political parties. You don't just have them in the US, we have them in Northern Ireland too. And there are unionists, which are pro-union, pro-United Kingdom, and there are nationalists, which are pro-uniting again with the Republic of Ireland. And of course, there were conflicting views, as there would be. And I remember a lot of people were saying, say no to this agreement, say no. And it was like a cliche almost. It was said that much. But I mean, I wasn't of voting age, so it didn't matter. I couldn't vote yes or no or anything, but I believe it was voted on, and the Good Friday Agreement was agreed to. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and I think it's brought significant peace to Northern Ireland. Not without problems, but it's improved a lot. I'll say this and let you talk, but after that, unfortunately, there was a bombing that happened after that, which a splinter group that didn't agree with the Good Friday Agreement, and there were unfortunately 29 people killed in a town in Northern Ireland. It wasn't so close to me, but I do remember that. I was a young boy, I guess 15 at the time, and a lot of people were killed. And I was used to bombs, in my town, a couple of bombs and no one being killed. So it was a huge tragedy. I think it was a simple lack of instructions that they were being evacuated but went the wrong direction. And unfortunately, they were killed. A lot of people, I think 29 people killed. So it was a real tragedy that affected everyone in Northern Ireland. And I think it only served to galvanize them to say, we need peace, we need an end to this.
That's the science of diplomacy as it has developed. Now we tend to feel that the more people at the table, the more likely for peace. And so when there is something like a war, some kind of conflict, we want the farmer to come in and say, this is what happened to me. My crops were destroyed or my pigs were killed. Mm-hmm. We want the women to come in and say, we were raped, our children were slaughtered. Right. And the more people you have at the table, the more likely everyone's not going to get everything, but a little slice of the pie.
Right. Yeah. It can help bring lasting peace. Okay, so big topics, but something that I remember and something that affected me and the nation. Now, we're not finished yet, and we've still darker things to speak of, I think. 9/11. It happened in America, but I was saying to you earlier, I think it had a world effect. And it had an effect. I mean, I remember. So the topic, of course, is what we remember. And I remember that, and I'm sure you do too. I was working in McDonald's at the time. I guess it was 17 or 18. A lot of stuff happened before I was really fully adult, I guess. I remember it happening. I think I was 18. I'm sure I was 18. Do quick maths. But I remember it happening, and it had been shown on television in McDonald's. I was working in McDonald's. We have them in Northern Ireland too. And we use American words for some of the stuff when we talk about it, even though none of us are American. But I remember it being on TV, and I thought, wow, this is exciting. And I didn't appreciate at the time that people were dying. I'm kind of ashamed of my attitude at the time, and I thought this is exciting and haha, America, without realizing that people were being killed both in the planes and in the buildings. And it was exciting from an outsider point of view, but of course it was a huge thing and a huge tragedy, but also so unbelievably terrible. From the point of view, the effect, the amount of people affected, not just, yes, the state and the country, the city of New York, but also the whole country. But I think it affected the world too. So at the time, I didn't appreciate what was happening. I didn't think of it as a tragedy initially. When I first saw it, I thought, wow, that's a huge explosion, and this is amazing and exciting, but I didn't appreciate maybe being a little bit young and naive, appreciate, especially at first when I first saw it, the tragedy of it. But of course, as I watched, we were watching it happen, and we saw the second building, and of course I started to understand this is really, really bad. This is something huge. And I suppose only afterwards I realized how huge, and I think the world realized how huge. But how did that affect you?
Yeah, that was the same way with me, because I didn't understand what the Trade Center was. I didn't realize that it was the financial center, and it represented our economic power globally.
Right.
And that was an attack on our soil. So I too did not appreciate all of that. I was involved in my own life. I'm trying to put bread on the table. I'm working. And this horrible tragedy has happened. And these people are jumping to their death. And then, of course, there's a lot of exploitation of this and fraud. People were claiming this and that. And then just recently, something up in Congress where we've got to have funding for these people, these first responders who are suffering from some kind of lung thing with this. And so it has been, well, we got into the war too, right? We entered Afghanistan.
For better or worse, it affected the Middle East and is still affecting it. Yeah. It was a huge deal. And I think I was saying to you that it affects the world, and I think it's even affected me from the point of view of flights. When I travel, I live on an island, of course. I'm born on an island. So when I travel, I think security has become much tighter. I don't know to be fair, I don't know if I traveled much before that by plane, but security on planes is quite tight and has been quite tight. And I think it's since that day has got even maybe occasionally got worse, more strict. Maybe with technology and stuff now it will relax a little bit.
Yes, that just reminds me. When I was flying over here, they took my Jergens hand lotion because it was too big. And so I said to the lady, don't throw it away. Use it. It's brand new.
I've been in that situation. So you have a limit of 100 milliliters on anything you bring in your hand luggage. And that to me is a knock-on effect. Of course, it's not exclusively of 9/11, but it's a knock-on effect of 9/11. Even though you might not be traveling to or from America, you can still have these restrictions on you. Yeah. So, and maybe it's a good thing because it's for our safety, but it's a little bit. Yeah, I've been caught with perfume for my mum, and I forgot. If you put it in your suitcase, it's fine. But I forgot when I was coming back. Put it in my suitcase, and I ended up giving it away for free too. And I said to them, "Here, this is for you." I didn't know her, I had no connection with her at all. But I said, "Hey, take that." Okay, wow, we've talked quite a lot already, so I guess we should move on a little bit. Let's see. How has the world changed since your childhood? What big significant things have you noticed?
Well, the thing that I miss the most is this wonderful telephone. Remember landline where you had the nice heavy desk phone and you were friends with it and you could hold it by the handle and this wonderful mouthpiece and then this earpiece that just snugs your ear and the voices. You could hear some background noises so you knew the person was still on the line. When I started talking on the cell phone a couple decades ago, I'd have to say, "Are you still there? Are you there?" "Yes, I'm here." "Oh, I didn't hear any background noises." And
there's a sense of nostalgia, I guess, from the days when there weren't mobile phones. I remember the first mobile. I'm sure I was the first one in my class in school with, I call them mobile phones, cell phone. And so I was the first in my class with a mobile phone, cell phone. And it was quite a bulky thing, big Nokia.
Did it have an antenna that you pulled
up? A big antenna,
like a walkie-talkie,
It was a lot like a walkie-talkie, but of course it had this, you could call people. And you didn't have to be at home. And you could play a little game or two. There were a couple of games.
That's the thing. It really made young people independent, and they no longer listen to adults.
Well, I think I don't think it made me any less or more rebellious, but it gave me the chance then, or maybe forced me to keep in touch with my friends. So like if you were meeting a friend and you were going to be a bit late, or he was going to be a bit late, then you could message and say, hey, 10 minutes late, but
convenient.
I'll meet you here.
What about the answering machine? Did you ever run home to see the little red light blink?
Yeah, I mean, even now we have answering machine, but we don't have the whole sort of, we have a more like a mobile phone. We have a landline, my parents. I mean, I'm talking about my parents, not me personally, but they still have a landline. But the set or handset, or headset or whatever you want to call it, I think a handset, it's wireless. So it's not got that, same appeal or whatever, or romanticism with it, but you can still get messages on it and stuff like that. There's an answering machine connected to that. So, but I never had I wouldn't say I ever had a great love for the phone or a dislike either in my youth. But so I wasn't one to run home and check messages.
Yes. When I was in LA in the 80s, I was auditioning for dance gigs. And so you'd have to run home to see if, your agent calls or if you got the gig.
Yeah. I think I was the same way with post, like letters. I think I would have been like that because I used to, when I was younger, I loved having pen pals and writing physical letters. And I think that's forgotten about nowadays. People tend to not write letters. I don't think it's gone, but I mean, we can still do it. But I think we just don't bother with it now. With other messaging systems, that instant messaging system, which is great, but at the same time, it's not got that same appeal to it. You don't get excited to the same degree. When you get a letter, there's the physicality of it, and maybe you get some you can see their handwriting, you can see maybe there's a little gift in it, a bookmark or something.
Have you read studies that show that every time we get an email or some message, we have endorphins pop up through our brains. So that's what people get addicted to. I want a message. I want something.
I still think, there is that appeal to it too. So it's not like it's lost, I guess, entirely. But I think the waiting for the post.
But the handwriting is very interesting.
It was more of a physicality to it, and your personality. And you were waiting for it, and maybe you'd have to wait a couple of days. Whereas now, you probably don't have to wait too long for an email or a WhatsApp message or whatever. So has it been for the better or for the worse? This techno, what's it called? Techno revolution, I guess.
Well, there's the ups and the downs with that, right?
I think
we've got some that instant and having to keep up with it. If you're older and you're in the workforce, you got to keep up with the
Well,
youth.
Even me, and I wouldn't say I'm older, but even me at times it's hard to keep up with it.
But you got to keep up if you're going to stay active.
And I think some people can actually be offended if you don't, but I mean, my point of view is I don't have to reply or not straight away. So I think I think every person has their own different point of view of it, maybe a slightly different point of view. Some people think you must reply
and sometimes we just need to unplug and just say, everybody leave me alone.
I think so. I think it can become a problem for some who don't have that separation from, especially if it's something that, they need a break from.
They have separation anxiety. Don't take my
devices there are those who have almost an addiction, and then there are those who have I don't want that, which maybe I'm more like that. I don't really want to be connected.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, but okay. So I think there are good things and bad things about it for sure. Okay, world events. So I'm going to name a couple. We certainly can't go through everything, but we've talked a little bit about some of the main ones for us. But world event, we've talked about national events, but what about world events? The fall of the Berlin Wall. Now, I don't really remember. I was young. I was alive, but I was young, and I don't really remember this or feel the significance. But do you?
Yeah, that was in the 80s and
89, wasn't it?
Yeah, the news would show these people just hacking away at this physical wall and selling it or holding them on for mementos. And it was the crumbling of this East-West divide. there was an actual physical wall built
Yeah.
right. Maybe it might even divided an apartment building. So
Right.
when the people were there
Wow.
and it was building, they saw the builders come, some of them were able to escape out that back door to
Yeah.
the west side
Wow. Yeah.
just in time.
Yeah. Wow. I think for me, I mean, looking back retrospectively, because I don't remember it, but I mean, I could remember it, but I just didn't feel the significance of it. I was 6 years old. So I didn't, Fall of Berlin Wall wasn't important to me. But it seems to me like a sign, not the breaking down of the Soviet Union, but a sign that it was going, or that was in the process of breaking down.
It did contribute to it. And then it did open up globalization. It opened up now this relationship with the West.
Yeah, which is very important, I think, to this day. Yeah. So did you have any feelings? I mean, you saw this wall being broken down.
Yeah, I saw the people having such emotion over it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't necessarily tied to it, so I wasn't quite sure, but
Yeah.
I knew it was a good thing. I knew it
Yeah.
had something to do with freedom.
So I guess you were glad for them.
Yes, I was so glad for them.
Yeah. Okay. What else? The death of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I didn't really care about that one.
Yeah, I think looking back, kind of feel sad because now if I listen to Michael Jackson's music, I think, wow, he's so talented, and I don't want to say we don't have talent like that now, but he certainly was talented, and his music to this day is still holds up as being, for me, it's better than most pop music that you can listen to.
I have two memories of him. One when he was with the Jackson 5, so that was when he was young. But then he was presented on MTV for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I was there when MTV first came about. And so he had these wonderful videos of, whatever that monster one. And that was very entertaining. And as being a dancer in LA, that was what we dancers did. We danced behind a singer.
Yeah. So there was maybe an inspiration from him.
Yeah,
from
I think that was, and then that was really my limit with that, because then we had all of this pedophilia after that.
So it brought in a lot of So you took a step back from appreciating him. Does sport and entertainment? I guess we talked a little bit about entertainment already. Does sport and entertainment history matter?
Yeah, I think if you're interested in sports, like for instance, someone who is interested in some kind of ball game, though, they might wonder, I wonder where the first ball was. And in Mesoamerica, in like 1600 BC, they found this rubber tree, and they made the first rubber ball that they used in games.
So I've heard, obviously before this, that they used to use like something like a pig's heart in some places, or something like that. So, I mean...
It's possible that, because it's also connected with sacrifice, too.
Yeah.
So they could use the rubber ball, and they probably use some pig's heart for sacrifice.
Yeah, I think even prior to rubber, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of... I don't think I like to play with that somehow. Wow, okay. So I think we could talk all day about this topic with a lot more to say, but we'll leave it there. And I hope that you listening have enjoyed it. So we've spoken and we've talked about what's the crack, about what we remember. So we've talked about some of the significant historical events to us, what we remember, how we felt, how it was connected or not connected with us, but maybe with our nation. Some world events too, and how they were important, and even a little bit about how the world has changed, even in our lifetimes. So that was the crack about what we remember.